Cop shoved a baton into a black teen's mouth with braces, didn't know he was traveling with U.S. Marshals. Jamal gripped the worn leather of the seat, his knuckles white, as the siren's wail pierced the humid night. The black sedan, unmarked but heavy with purpose, had been cruising smoothly down the deserted highway, a silent promise of safety, until the flashing blue and red lights filled the rearview mirror. "Just a routine stop, kid," Marshal Evans had grunted from the driver's seat. But his eyes, meeting Jamal's in the mirror, held a different story, a flicker of unease that mirrored the knot in Jamal's stomach. At 17, with a mouth full of newly tightened braces, Jamal was an unlikely federal witness, but the flash drive hidden in his sock held secrets that could bring down titans. The patrol car pulled alongside, its spotlight blinding. Marshal Evans, a mountain of a man with a stern face, and Marshal Davies, sharp and observant in the passenger seat, exchanged quick, silent glances. Jamal, small in the back, felt the familiar prickle of fear, a constant companion since his father's accident. The officer approached, a stocky man with a tight jaw and eyes that seemed to narrow even further when he saw Jamal's reflection in the tinted window. "License and registration, folks," the officer barked, his voice laced with an authority that felt more like aggression. Evans calmly handed over his credentials, but the officer barely glanced at them. His gaze was fixed on Jamal. "And what's the boy doing in the back there? Looks a little out of place," the officer sneered, his hand already on his sidearm. Before Evans could respond, the officer yanked open the back door. The cool night air rushed in, carrying the scent of exhaust and stale asphalt. Jamal flinched, pulling back. "Get out of the car, kid. Hands where I can see him." "Officer, he's with us. Federal business," Davies interjected, her voice firm, her hand slowly moving towards her jacket. But the officer, later identified as Officer Miller, wasn't listening. His eyes were cold, dismissive, fixed on Jamal's dark skin and the expensive braces glinting in the dim light. He saw a stereotype, not a protected witness. "I said, out of the car, boy." Miller's voice escalated, his hand now gripping his baton. Jamal, caught between the marshal's silent warnings and the officer's escalating aggression, slowly pushed open the door and stepped out, hands raised. The moment Jamal was fully out, Miller shoved him roughly against the car. The metal of the sedan was cold against Jamal's cheek. "What's in your pockets, smart guy?" Miller demanded, his voice a low growl. Jamal stammered, "Nothing, sir. I told you, I'm with them." Before he could finish, Miller's face contorted in a sneer. "Don't talk back to me, punk." With a sickening lurch, Miller brought his baton up, not to strike, but to silence. The cold, hard plastic end slammed into Jamal's open mouth, forcing his lips back, grinding against the metal of his braces. A sharp, searing pain exploded through his jaw. He tasted blood, metallic and warm, as the baton pressed deeper, threatening to shatter teeth and tear flesh. His eyes watered, not just from the pain, but from the raw, humiliating terror. He could feel the braces digging into his gums, a cruel counterpoint to the baton's assault. "Get your hands off him, officer!" Marshal Evans's roar was like thunder, shaking the very ground. In a blur of motion, both marshals were out of the car, badges now prominently displayed, weapons drawn and pointed directly at Miller. "U.S. Marshals, this is a federal operation. You are interfering with a protected witness. Drop your weapon now." Davies's voice, though calmer, carried an icy authority that finally cut through Miller's prejudiced rage. Miller froze, his face draining of color as he finally registered the glint of the federal badges, the serious, unwavering eyes behind the drawn firearms. The baton clattered to the asphalt. He looked from the marshals to Jamal, still pressed against the car, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and defiant relief. The realization hit Miller like a physical blow. He had just assaulted a federal witness, under the protection of U.S. Marshals. His career, his life, was over. Jamal, spitting blood onto the ground, felt a strange surge of power amidst the pain. This wasn't just about him. This was about his father, Thomas T.J. Jones, a man who had believed in truth and paid the ultimate price. T.J. had been a mid-level analyst for the Department of Defense, a quiet man who loved jazz and spent weekends building elaborate model airplanes. But 6 months ago, he'd stumbled upon something far more sinister than a misfiled report. A vast, intricate web of corruption connecting a powerful senator, Senator Maxwell Thorne, to a shadowy defense contractor, Aegis Solutions. They were siphoning billions from taxpayer money through inflated contracts for phantom projects, all while supplying substandard equipment to the military. TJ had tried to go through official channels, quietly compiling evidence, but he'd been betrayed. His own supervisor, a man he'd trusted, had tipped off Thorne. TJ was framed for espionage, his reputation shredded, and thrown into a federal prison where he died under suspicious circumstances, officially listed as a heart attack, but Jamal knew better. Before his death, TJ had managed to encrypt and hide a single flash drive containing everything, emails, financial records, voice recordings, and had sent a coded message to Jamal, guiding him to its location. Jamal's goal, his burning motivation, was to deliver that drive to the special prosecutor, Assistant Attorney General Lena Hansen, a woman known for her uncompromising integrity. He was the last link in his father's quest for justice. The Marshals, after ensuring Jamal was stable and calling for medical assistance, secured Miller, who was now a trembling wreck. The incident, though terrifying, had inadvertently served as a stark reminder of the very system Jamal was fighting against. It fueled his resolve. The drive to the federal building felt longer, the pain in his mouth a constant throb, but Jamal clutched the flash drive in his hand, a tangible piece of his father's legacy. Inside the sterile, hushed offices, Assistant Attorney General Hansen was waiting. She was a formidable woman, her gaze piercing, her posture radiating quiet strength. Jamal, his lips swollen and a fresh bandage on his inner cheek, sat across from her, the Marshals standing guard. He plugged the flash drive into her secure terminal. The room fell silent as the data loaded. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Hansen scrolled, her expression shifting from focused attention to grim determination, then finally to a look of profound shock and anger. This is comprehensive," she murmured, looking up at Jamal, her eyes filled with a new respect. "Your father, he was a brave man." The words were a balm to Jamal's wounded spirit. The evidence laid bare Thorne's and Aegis Solutions' intricate scheme, detailing shell corporations, offshore accounts, and the deliberate sabotage of military equipment to ensure repeat contracts. There was even a recording of Thorne explicitly ordering TJ's containment. The public exposure was swift and brutal. Within days, headlines screamed about the Aegis scandal. Senator Thorne, caught in a web of irrefutable evidence, was arrested on the Senate floor, a dramatic scene broadcast live, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. Key executives from Aegis Solutions were indicted, their corporate empire crumbling. Officer Miller, the small-town cop who had unknowingly assaulted a federal witness, faced federal charges for assault and obstruction of justice, his act of petty racism leading to his complete ruin. Jamal watched the news reports from a quiet, secure location, his jaw still aching, but his heart lighter than it had been in months. His father's name was cleared, his sacrifice vindicated. Justice, slow and often painful, had finally arrived. The taste of blood in his mouth was replaced by the sweet, if still distant, taste of victory. Disclaimer: this story is a fictional dramatization created for entertainment purposes only.